One more thing before we introduce our 2014 candidates for Michigan State Senate for the 31st District. We do like to give two more things we'd like to say. The first, that each and every filed candidate was invited to attend tonight. And this includes the Democratic candidate, Mr. Mendikowski. This gentleman did return our call, and he was very cordial but had to send his regrets this evening. He's a teacher, and he tells us he was previously committed to a school-related event. We appreciate that he was kind enough to return our call, and we are disappointed that he cannot be here this evening. Secondly, before we begin our forum, we'd like to make one statement to our audience. Please remember that this is a house of God, and we ask you to keep that in mind and treat each and every candidate with the respect that they deserve with their offer to serve our community and state. Your expected kindness and mindfulness that this is a house of God is greatly appreciated. Now, as we go to introduce tonight's candidates, I want to let you know that we do have a moderator, and he's a movie star. About 3 months ago, I got a text from my good buddy Bill Gupton, who's not here this evening, and he's going, "Terry, Chris Ann Hall is on 1570. So I replied back to him and I said, "What's a 1570? You know, and he said, "Terry, it's the AM station for Flint." Well, I'm an Oakland County recovering addict. I had to live there for 40 years. I'm still in counseling. So I was a WJR person. So I, quick like a busy bee, I switched over to 1570, and I got to listen to this gentleman interview Chris Ann Hall live on the air, and I haven't turned his station off since. He is all conservative, all talk, all the time, 1570 AM on your radio dial, out of Flint. Tonight's forum moderator majored in radio and television at Wayne State University, making his tenure in radio with WOMC and WABX, among other stations. His distinctly velvety voice has presented news, music, and voice over for radio and television. He currently lives in the Flint area, but he grew up in Motown. Lou loves people, and with the success of his morning show, people love to talk to Lou. Not just talk, but super talk. Please welcome radio personality Lou Lobsinger. Lou? Okay. All right, let's go with tonight's candidates. I understand that protocol is to introduce the senators first. Senator Mike Green from District 31, which includes Bay and Thumb regions. Senator Green is a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee and serves as chairman of the 3 subcommittees for the Departments of Agriculture and Rural Development, Environmental Quality, and Natural Resources. He's also a member of the Senate Committees on Banking and Financial Institutions, Capital Outlay and National Resources, Environmental, and Great Lakes. Senator Green has been elected by his peers as a leader of legislative caucus groups dedicated to protecting the rights of Michigan gun owners, hunters, anglers, and trappers. He serves as chairman for the Senate Second Amendment Caucus, Senate Chair of the Michigan Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus, and as an elected member of the National Assembly of Sportsmen's Caucus's Executive Council. In just 3 years in the Senate, he has provided legislative leadership and achieved success on a wide range of issues, including the state budget, the federal balanced budget amendment, pro-Second Amendment and sportsmen's legislation, crime victims' rights, agriculture and agribusiness, welfare reform, veterans issues, government reforms, autism insurance, healthcare quality, sales and property tax reform, conservative efforts, environmental cleanup, and wetlands regulatory reform, local Senate and states transportation infrastructure, among others. Prior to his election to the Senate, he owned and operated a successful small business, Green's Log Rails, and Custom Log Furniture. And he served in the Michigan House from 1995 to 2001. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Mike Green. Good to see you. Make yourself comfortable. Okay, next on the list is our current state representative, Kevin Daly of District 82 in Lum. State Representative Daly is a lifelong resident of Lapeer County, born and raised in Arcadia Township. Daly is a fourth-generation centennial farm owner and is one of a few active farmers currently serving in the Michigan legislature. His background in agriculture has taught him the tenets of hard work, integrity, and honesty, and it is these values he seeks to uphold in Lansing. He has also served in various roles in community organizations and affiliations, including president of the Tri-County Michigan Milk Producers Association and board member of the Lapeer County Farm Bureau. Immediately prior to his election to the House of Representatives, Kevin served 24 years as a trustee, treasurer, and supervisor of Arcadia Township. Representative Daly is a former member of the Lapeer County Agriculture Preservation Board and a current member of the Michigan Right to Life and National Rifle Association. Representative Daly was first elected to the Michigan House in November 2008 and represents Lapeer County. For the 2013-14 legislative term, he will serve as chair of the House Agricultural Committee. In addition, he has a seat on the local government, transportation, and infrastructure and education committees. His legislative priorities are to rebuild Michigan's economy by eliminating wasteful spending through rigorous government reform and growing the agriculture industry in Michigan. Kevin and his wife of 31 years, Debbie, and I think they just had an anniversary. 36, this is an old slide. All right. They have 3 grown children. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome State Representative Kevin Daly. Good to see you. Welcome. Okay, and last but not least, we do have a third candidate running at this time. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of bio on this gentleman. He's going to be new to the Senate process, I understand. So I'm sure he's going to tell you a little bit about himself in his own intro. So please welcome our third candidate this evening, Mr. Jeffrey Phillips. Welcome. Okay. Lou, are you ready to rock and roll? All right. Oh, yeah. All right. All right. You have the stage. You can do whatever you want. You can speak from outside, from the roof. Doesn't matter. It's all yours. Whether you want it or not.
I can kind of get off. You know, these guys right here. Okay. Don't trip. Like jump rope lately? Okay. 10 minutes to introduce yourselves. So we'll go from left to right. We'll go from left to right all night tonight. Well, not all night, but as long as we're here. Okay, good.
Left to right, depending on which way you're doing it. Well, thank you. I appreciate the Tea Party putting this event together tonight. I think most of the people in here know me. Lifelong resident of Lapeer County, as was mentioned, and I have been married to my wife 36 years. She tried at an event we were at here a little while ago to stand up and say that I married her when she was 12 years old. And that didn't sound like a very good political thing to use, so we try not to repeat that very often. But it's been a pleasure to represent Lapeer County the last 5.5 years. You guys know a little bit about myself. I'm going to go into a little bit about it. A local farmer in Lapeer County, lived here my entire life, 5-generation farm out on Daly Road. Got involved in local government about 30 years ago now. Became a township trustee, and then I served as a township treasurer and a township supervisor. So I ended up spending 24 years out in Arcadia Township, right in the middle of Lapeer County. Been involved when I first came in the legislature 5.5 years ago. Of course, it was under a different leadership. Was a very interesting time for me in the minority in the House of Representatives, watching how poorly the state was being run. Fortunate for me, I have served on the Ag Committee the whole time. I did come in my second term as chair of the Ag Committee. I've served as chair of the Ag Committee the last 4.5 years. Or 3.5 years, excuse me. And, you know, over the period of time I've been in the ag, when I first came into the House 6 years ago, I was the only active farmer, period, in the state legislature. In Michigan, where the second largest industry is agriculture, I was the only active farmer in the legislature. Over the last 5.5 years, I've kind of become the go-to guy in the House. The Speaker comes to me. You'll find Democrats and Republicans both come to me on ag issues, which I find pretty important. We do have more ag people there now today, but it's very a good feeling to have the respect of my fellow members in the ag community out there. But I'm a consistent conservative. You'll find that if you look at my record, I think most of you know here, I'm consistent. I tell you what I'm going to do, and I do what I say I'm going to do. So I'm up here today running for the state Senate seat. As you know, we're redistricting. I'm not sure. We literally didn't know if I was going to make it tonight. We've been in session voting on budgets today. They were going to vote on both of our budgets today, and they decided to only vote on one. Luckily, I got out at about 6 o'clock and jumped in the car and ran to get back here. So just literally walked in the door a minute ago. But it's important to have good representation in Lansing. It's important to have good representation in the Senate. So with that, I think we'll just let the other guys introduce themselves, and we'll go on to questions and answers. Pass it right along to.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Phillips. I'm currently on the Kingston School Board, and I'm a 10th District Committee man in the Republican Party. I got involved because I felt that we needed to really get back to our core values and our Constitution. I feel that we're very concerned. I'm very concerned when I see us electing Republicans to go to Washington who pass the enabling acts that the Republicans here in Lansing are attempting to nullify. So I did make an effort to try to put my name on the ballot when I found out that Don Valeric had dropped out of the 10th District congressional race, for the simple reason that I felt we needed to have a choice in that election. And I knew it would have been a tall battle, but it would have at least steered the conversation and got us talking about some of the very serious issues. The indefinite detention of American citizens and the NSA surveillance are things that Candace Miller voted for. This is very dangerous, and we have some people here who voted to nullify the NSA, the NDAA's indefinite detention. But I think their bill went a little bit short, because what it basically said was, instead of making it a crime for a person to kidnap and indefinitely detain an American citizen here in Michigan without a warrant, without a judge, without a jury, without any kind of trial at all, instead of making that illegal, what we did was Michigan will wash its hands of it. We will not have anyone on Michigan payroll causing this to occur, but we will still have federal agents being able to do so. I think that when we hear the word nullification, we need to take it more seriously. We need to make it a felony for any person, regardless of whose payroll you're on, to do such a thing. And so that is something I would take a step further in Lansing. We also need to start changing the conversation that we have. I think that far too often the dialogue that we hear and the agenda and the issues that come forward seem to be steered by political action committees, by various different groups. I heard a delegate tell me the term astroturfing the grassroots, and I think that's a great term, because what we have is we have people who run organizations, who host events, who host opportunities for us to hear their side of the story and hear their agenda, and they try to get us all rallied up as conservatives to go out there and get the signatures for their petition or get the candidates elected that they want elected, but we don't hear the other side of the story. And I'd like to see us restore our delegations. I'd like to see us get a real debate of actual delegates, and if we can't do it through the political parties because they've corrupted their own processes and their own rules, then let's do it ourselves as a people. I'd like to invite every section, every square mile on this map, to have every single township section out there to have a delegate. And if that's not you, then find out who it is. And if there's nobody, then it is you. But we need to start having events where we can have peer communication, where we can hear not only from the people who are pushing an agenda, but from the people ourselves. And we need to have discussion and debate among the issues on our own. We, the people, need to have a voice, and we can do that. There's nothing stopping us. We just need to pick up the fragments of a system that's long been forgotten, which is the American system of do-it-yourself government. I feel we need to start talking about some issues that you don't hear solutions very often from Republicans. For example, we recently, a few years back, we did this welfare reform where basically we said, well, there's a big problem here, so we're just going to put a deadline on it, and that's going to somehow solve the problem. Well, that doesn't solve the problem because you've created the dependency when you put someone on that program, whatever program it is, whether it be rent, subsidy, Section 8, groceries with a bridge card, utility assistance, etc. We have all of these dependency cases where we've created a system where people can't go out and get a job because if they did, they would lose their benefits and they would be worse off than they were before they started. So why would they do it? So I have a 3-step plan for welfare reform. Step 1, you have to have upward mobility. Number 1 thing that we must do is we must allow these people to get a job and to keep most of what they've earned while not risking the immediate loss of benefits. Give them a transitional period. Let them gradually lose part of their benefits while they're earning money in their job. And then after a period of time, gradually wean them off of the benefits and onto their own independence smoothly, rather than making it so impossible that they're going to say, well, I can't do that because I'll lose my bridge card tomorrow, or I'll do this tomorrow. You know, if you pull it out from under them like that, it's not going to happen. They're just going to stay on it all the way until the end of that expiration date, whenever it is. Step 2, we need to have a real thinking about how our agencies interoperate. And we need to consider, what do we do when we have 2 competing economic philosophies and they clash against each other? We have free markets in this country. We have the idea that you should be able to set the price of what you're selling, including both services and products. And we should be able to keep what we earn. Well, what the problem is, we also have all of these social programs that are rooted in a completely different philosophy. We have all of these social programs so that we end up with a system where the companies like Walmart, and I'm just using them as an example, I'm sure there's plenty of them, we pay, as taxpayers, $900,000 per Walmart store, per each store, each year, subsidizing the groceries and the housing and the utilities of the employees. That same store makes an $85 million profit. There is no reason why we should be paying for this as taxpayers, because what we're doing is we're subsidizing their ability to keep their costs lower than what you as a small business would be able to sell your products for. That puts you out of business, it keeps them in business, and we're subsidizing that cost. The solution to that problem is to look at the way that we fund unemployment. It's fund as a collective. Your gross payrolls, there's a percentage that is paid above and beyond your gross payrolls as a collective into an insurance premium that kicks in for when there's a claim. Do a similar claim process for all of your social welfare programs. Do it on a household basis where, let's say you have two people who could be working in the household and one of them's working half-time at a company. Well, that's 1/4 of the available work hours. So file a claim in the back end between your human services agency and your processing of the quarterly reports from payroll, which we do already with the UIA. And use that kind of process, tie it together in the back end so that we end up with a system where if you're a company that's causing your employees to be dependent on the taxpayers, even though you're consuming their time and they're employed with you, if they're employed full-time, the taxpayers should expect that you're going to help them cover the cost of living so that we're not. If they're not employed full-time, go on a proportional basis. If it's that 20 hours of the 80 that 2 people could be working in a week, then charge them 1/4. But let that cost slide, just like it currently does with unemployment. Let that rate go up or down based on the number of claims. That way, the only portion that the rest of the taxpayers are responsible for is the portion that they're actually underemployed.
Thanks, Jeff, we need to move along.
Okay,
here.
I apologize. So.
It's okay, Jeff. No, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And now, Senator Green, you're up, sir.
You guys are in the same boat. Huh? It's like, I need a hat. Have I got a hat out there? Well, it's sure nice of me to be here tonight. I thank you all for coming out. Rarely have I, in all my years in politics, have I been able to speak to such a large crowd. Generally, people just don't care. And I've been through a lot of forums, and so it warms my heart that you came. Whether I do well or not, it warms my heart that you came and you care. Let me tell you just a little bit about my family. I will say it quickly. But my wife, Paul, and I have raised 5 children. We have 20 grandchildren. Her and I have been married for 47 years. And I will say the same thing that Kevin said. I know, I married her when I was 10, right? But you can figure out how old I am. But we have 5 kids, and we love them to death. And they're all older. And we live and farm in Mayville, which is just kind of over the border. We bought a farm when I was in our mid-20s. Her and I were both raised on a farm. We wanted to raise our kids on a farm so I could teach them how to work. And we did, and we loved it. We had a great time. My 5 kids, one of them is a missionary in South Africa. I have 2 boys that are local businessmen in the log home industry. I have one son that's a Baptist preacher, and I have a son-in-law that's a Baptist preacher. So my kids are all doing well. I believe I raised them fine, and I think tonight you're going to hear maybe some bragging going on for me. But if I don't say it, nobody else will, right? But I am proud of my kids, and they're a part of my life, and I could go on and on about them, but I'm going to run out of time. So that's my family. My faith. I belong to Juniata Baptist Church it's between Vassar and Mayville. I am a deacon there. I've been a bus driver, a bus captain, a Sunday school teacher. We've been very, very active in the church. I raised all my kids in the Christian school there too. I am pro-life. I believe in strong traditional values. In fact, I've been endorsed in this election by the Right to Life PAC. That's really the reason I got into government, was because of my beliefs in right to life. Family, faith, hard work. All my life I've been involved in hard work. I started off when I was 18 as an apprentice tool and die maker for General Motors. I worked there 30 years. Later on, we bought the family farm, so I worked the farm and worked at General Motors. Later on, I was elected a county commissioner, so I was a county commissioner, ran the farm, worked at General Motors. It's all hard work. And the thing about family, faith, freedom, and hard work are all values that we all share. Whatever county in this district, Bay, Tuscola, Lapeer, all the same values that you and I share together. I ran for the Senate in 2010 to make Michigan a place where our kids and our grandkids could live, work, and raise a family if they chose. I said I'd roll up my sleeves and get to work. I served in the House from 95 through 2000, left in 2000, thinking this is the end of my political world. But in 2010, some folks drugged me back in, and I ran for the Senate, and I've been here ever since. But my goal then was, I was upset with what Obama was doing. I just figured I had to get back involved. And I did. And I didn't get involved just to go down there and push buttons. I got involved because I wanted to work hard. That's all I've done all my life. And that's what I did. I'm not a single issue legislator. This is not a single issue district. I chair 3 budgets in the Appropriations Committee, subcommittees. For the last 4 years, and we're about ready to finish it, we've had 4 balanced budgets, something we never had in the last 8 years, and Kevin just attested to that. 2 years of sheer pandemonium in the legislature. But 4 years now, we've had balanced budgets on time, so people knew how much they had to live with and work with. Since 2011, I passed 21 reform bills, wide range of issues. Not new laws. People complain about us because all we ever do is make new laws. This is not a new law. These are all amendments to existing laws that need to be changed and updated. And they're important to do. And I mentioned the other day at a place I was at, I'm going to have some water if anybody's got any. I'm sorry. Travis, can you find me some? All the laws that we've had on the books forever and ever have to be updated every year, because it's important that we know how to deal with problems. We need to find solutions, and the problems always change, so we have to find new solutions. I've been a strong advocate for agriculture. When I was in the House, I represented 2 very strong agriculture counties, and in the Senate now I've represented 5. Agriculture has been my issue from the beginning. I love agriculture. I wished I could have farmed. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough money. But I love agriculture, and it kind of helped me along, being chair of the Ag Committee when I was in the House, and now chair of the Ag Appropriations Subcommittee. And I heard a previous speaker talk about the federal government. You know, the federal government runs our state, runs our lives, runs everything we do every day. Rules, rules, rules every time we turn around. All from the federal government. You know, the federal government's going to run us into oblivion financially if we don't get a hold of the debt that we've got every day. $17 trillion in debt today, expected to raise to 20 or 21 by the time Obama leaves. We just have a bottomless pit of money that legislators reach back and grab a hold of and throw at the problems we got. But I met with a group of legislators around the state a year and a half ago, and we all agreed it's time we did something about it. The Fifth Amendment is an amendment that states can put amendments into the Constitution, and we proceeded with that. And we passed in the House and the Senate the Federal Balanced Budget Amendment, and it's passed. Michigan is now one of 23 states. We need 34 states, and then we'll have a convention. I did something. We have to do something. We can't go down there and do nothing. Everybody has big ideas of what we're going to do when we get there. But I did something, and it wasn't easy. Of course, everybody knows my involvement with the Second Amendment. I've been a leader on Second Amendment issues in Lansing ever since I was in the legislature. When I was in the House, I passed the first shall issue for Michigan residents to be able to get a CPL if they passed the test and if they did not have a background, though they couldn't. So now anybody in Michigan can carry a concealed weapon. Probably not in here, some do, but you have the right to do that now, whether you want it or not. You know, I've had other legislative successes. She mentioned some of them. Crime victims' rights was the bill I introduced. Some more rights. Welfare reform. I improved treatment of autism and had the state pay for it. I protected child college savings accounts. I addressed funding roads and bridges. I had a piece of legislation in that dealt with vets. So the job of a legislature, which I've always maintained, should be more than simply voting on other people's bills. They all need to be leaders. That's what I've done. I led the Federal Balanced Budget Amendment in Michigan. I chaired 3 budget committees. I'm chairman of the Second Amendment Caucus. I'm co-chair of the Michigan Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus, and I'm a member of the National Assembly of the Sportsmen's Caucus Council. I've been a leader. Well, Michigan's made a lot of progress over the last few years. We're on the right track. We've got the 6th highest job growth of any state. Our personal income in Michigan has grown faster than any other Great Lakes state and the nation. And all 3 Wall Street credit agencies have upgraded our credit outlook as a vote of confidence. While we've made a lot of progress in Michigan over the last 4 years, there's still more to do. I'll work just as hard over the next 4 years as I have in the previous 4 years as your state senator. My reason for running for election is simple. I'm not running because I need a job, and I'm not running because I want to stay in Lansing. I had a private life after I was a state representative and it taught me something. We can grumble all we want, but I learned how to start a business. I learned what the trouble is that we have, and I learned that we can all be legislators. I'm running to continue the work that needs to be done to keep Michigan on track and get the federal government off our backs. Today, I ask you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Green. And once again, let me say we were going from left to right. We have questions submitted from the audience. We have some other questions here also that were presented or put together prior to you folks arriving here. Remember, one thing I think we need to know is, and that is that brevity is next to godliness. So I'll let you take that however you want to take it. But we will go from left to right, and we'll start with the first question. And it comes from this page here. And the question is, and you will all have the same question, so be prepared. Do you know the issues facing your constituents, and can you name the most important one to most of them? Yep, you first.
I'm not going to get.
Yep,
I'm going to have to answer
okay.
the first one every time. I hope.
Well, come on.
And I will if you want me to, I guess.
It's a
But,
real advantage to go first, you know.
I think that probably the number one issue, and one of the issues that I was discussing with a lady on the way home, is Obamacare. I got a call from a lady just a few days ago, and on my cell phone, that she has a real concern because she's got a health care issue and she doesn't know where to turn. She's been without health care. She'd always had health care. She's had a problem, and I've only had a chance to talk to this lady about 3 minutes. We're going to talk again tomorrow morning. But apparently, since January, she's had some issues with her health care. It's a private business owner that had their own health care for years. And you know this saying that if you like your health care, you can keep it. It didn't work for her either, and that's most of the calls that I get. She apparently has lost that health care, had to go on to the Obamacare exchange system, and she has now found out that she has not got the coverage that she had before. Most of those people are finding that, yeah, the coverage that they're promised, it doesn't cost them a whole lot more, but there's this huge copay on top of that. So they pay this whole copay before it takes effect. But I can tell you that I have worked consistently against Obamacare in the state. I did not vote in favor of an exchange. I did not vote in favor of the expansion. Thank God we didn't have the exchange. We were able to stop that. It did pass the Senate. It did not even get a vote in the House because we were working there to stop that exchange in the House of Representatives. So we worked and stopped it in the House. And I think that's going to prove to be even more important as we go forward and the lawsuits are filed across the country, because the states that haven't signed on to that exchange are going to find that they're better off than the ones that did. So I guess that's probably the number one issue I have at this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Representative. Moving now to Jeff, your question here. What would you personally do to make government smaller with less control?
To make the government smaller with less control?
Yes.
Well, I think that we need to restore consent of the governed. To echo what he just said about Obamacare, well, we have no consent. We have no, with this we have a mandate imposed upon us, and I think that is our most important issue, is to restore consent of the governed. We had an election back in 2004 and again in 2010 when we ratified the Michigan Constitution regarding marriage, and now we have no consent of the governed on that because we gave consent for marriage to be defined a certain specific way, and I respect our Constitution, and now we have a single judge who has somehow overturned that and has decided that Michigan's Constitution is unconstitutional. We're losing our consent of governed. We have the Article 5 Convention, which Mr. Green has championed, and I applaud him for, he will go down in history. You know that, right? School children generations from now will learn about Mike Green having been the trigger point on this Convention of the States. But what I would like to challenge you is to ask my other opponent, why did you vote on Senate Bill, or House Bill 5380? Because what you've done is you've given up your own vote. Because if we didn't have that bill, how would you get delegates to a constitutional convention of the states? You would have every elected legislature in our state vote for each individual delegate or a slate of delegates. Instead, this bill has given our House Majority Leader and our Senate Majority Leader, the Speaker of the House, and Randy Richardville and Jace Bulger get 5 of their friends. Those 2 people get to pick 5 people to go to this convention. That's not consent of the governed. That's not consent of the people. These are the same people who pushed Common Core down our throat on a voice vote with no roll call. And then we get two delegates from the Democrats, minority leaders. Does that sound like consent of the governed? So I think the number one thing we need to do is we need to consider in every issue, are we getting consent of the governed, consent of the people? If we can do that, then I don't think the people want big government.
Jeff,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move along here. And in some cases here, as we present a question, as we go through the evening, some questions will be directed to every one of the candidates using the same question. Others may be more specific to a certain candidate, and we'll try and make sure that everybody is equally distributed here. Mike, you're up right now, and your question, which will also be posed to the other 2 candidates, says, What have you done to protect and strengthen my Second Amendment rights?
That's an easy one. And I think I spoke a little bit about it when I was in the House. I introduced and we passed the original shall issue bill to let everyone carry concealed weapons license. Since then, I introduced a bill coming back from the Senate the first year in to take away some of the issues dealing with that. One of the parts that we had to include a number of parts to get the bill passed. Things we didn't like, but yet some things that some could say, well, if you put that in, I can stomach the vote. One of those was gun-free zones, which I call them criminal empowerment zones. You can go into a criminal empowerment zone where there are no guns, and you're free to do whatever you'd like with your pistol or with whatever you've got. And so that's one of the things I really tried to get rid of. I introduced Senate Bill 59, some of you may remember that, and it did get rid of those. And it did some things that, again, getting us back to the freedom that the Constitution gives us to keep and bear arms. Even our Michigan Constitution has the right to keep arms to protect themselves. You know, some people are really mixed on that issue. Some people are very supportive. Some people say, what are you so gunny about? What is this with you? You know what? It's all about our rights. I didn't introduce that bill in 1999 so I could have a concealed weapons permit. In fact, I didn't get one until about 2009. I did it because it's available if I need one. And that's what it's all about. We ought to have the right. Whether you want it or not, you ought to have the right. And so those people that really get offensive to me about the Second Amendment, being able to carry guns, all you want's guns, guns, more guns everywhere. Actually, I got a bill to put guns in schools too. I won't belabor you with that one, but it's all about protecting yourself, and that's why they put it in the Constitution, I believe, that we all ought to have the right. So now they're not having mass murders anymore. We're having mass stabbings, right? Okay, that's my Second Amendment speech.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Jeff, we'll come back to this. You want to go up there next? Go ahead. Or we're going to go to Jeff here. Jeff, I'm going to change the wording on this a little bit because you're not in my office right now, but what will you do to protect and strengthen my Second Amendment rights?
Well, you know, I'm on the Kingston School Board, and we actually had quite a bit of conversation about this because we have a principal and we have some administrators and some teachers who have a concealed carry permit, but currently it is illegal for them to be able to use that to defend our kids if something bad were to happen. Had some conversations with your office, you know that. We do have a slight disagreement. My position is to recognize that there is a distinction between property rights and our Second Amendment rights. And if I walk into your home and you ask me to take off my shoes, I will. If you ask me to take off my gun, I have to make a choice. Do I want to enter your home with my gun or without? If I don't want to do it, if I don't want to follow your rules, I won't enter your home. Public property, absolutely. We cannot infringe on people's rights to bear arms in public spaces. But I'm not entirely convinced that a commissioned use facility, such as the interior of our kindergarten classroom, is something that the state should decide the rules of, because that's for a specific purpose and a specific group of people. So I'd like to challenge you to question, should we have preemption on commissioned use property? If so, that is the way it is, and I appreciate that and I respect that, but we also need to get our consultants that run our school policies, like Neola, to actually write a legal policy. I've been arguing with them for a year about this. I know that the policy we have is illegal, but the consultants keep it written to ban all weapons, even if you have the concealed permit, which is terrible. And our school boards are finding ourselves in a real difficult position. So I would like I am a champion of the Second Amendment, and I do believe that we should be keeping that control in the rights of the individuals. I don't think the state should be telling us how to wear our gun. That's one of the big arguments that we have is, should it be openly carried or should it be concealed carried? It doesn't matter. It's a gun. So anyways,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And let's take our attention away here for a moment and think of why we are here. This is a forum and not a debate. And also, brevity would be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, we'll be ordering breakfast anytime down the road. I was thinking a minute ago here, a train goes by, we start. A train goes by, we stop. I thought that might be a good idea to see how long we're going to stay up there. But I've never seen so many trains go by in my whole life. You people live out here with all these trains? Holy cow. Okay. And we'll get to you next here, Representative Daley, with basically the same question. What have you done to protect and strengthen my Second Amendment rights?
Absolutely, thank you, and welcome to Lapeer. My father-in-law lives in downtown Lapeer, and the trains have driven him crazy for 35 years, so, and he was the mayor for a while. Second Amendment rights. You know, one thing I want to mention before I talk about that is that, you know, no single legislator can pass a single piece of legislation. The way our system is designed is that we work together, we specialize in areas, especially before term limits came about. You know, you became specialized in an area and you became a leader in your community or in your caucus, in your group, in that area. When it comes to gun rights, one of the first things, or what I would work on in the future, I think is what you're asking, what we work towards. I have a real concern. My wife's a school teacher. I have a real concern with the fact that some crazy lunatic off the street can walk into that gun and they know there isn't a single gun in that school. And we worked to pass legislation that the governor vetoed last year, and we worked as hard on it as the House, as Senator Green did in the Senate. It's not a one-person bill. It's worked on both sides of the aisle, or both sides of the building, I should say. We worked hard in the Senate to get that through. Now, I thought we had did a good job. Unfortunately, the work hadn't been done with the governor, and the governor vetoed it. And then I went to a township meeting that night, and I made the announcement that we had passed this thing, and I had a school teacher, and this school teacher owns, let me tell you, he told me he owns a lot of guns, and he's a good supporter, Second Amendment supporter, but he's a school teacher, and he said, he got very upset with me. That's wrong. We don't need guns in schools. And then I got thinking, you know, my wife's a first grade teacher. This guy was a high school teacher. There's a little difference between a little tiny kid like this and a big kid. His concern was, and then I met with him because I said, you know, I had a lot of respect for this guy. I said, I want to sit down. We went and had breakfast together. We sat down and we talked, and he said, here's my concern. I've been teaching. In fact, he's been retired for 5 or 6 years, and he taught for 30 years. And he taught in the Flint district for a few years before he came to North Branch. And he said, I taught with a guy that was a concealed weapon carrier. And he said a little later on down the road, he actually got arrested for pulling his gun on road rage on the road. He said, I don't want that lunatic to have that gun in school. And I said, but you know what? He lost his permit when he did that. He shouldn't have had a permit to start with. And so I still didn't agree with him, but I think that, I guess what I'm getting at is what I'd like to see us do, and I think a possible solution to this would be is that we require every teacher to be trained, and then we allow our districts to decide who in that school can carry. And, you know, they're doing that now. North Branch, I've worked with all the school districts in Lapeer County. I've worked with North Branch. They figured out a way to have some people in there. I'm not going to go into it because they keep it very quiet, and rightfully so. But they've got people in the schools in Lapeer County that are allowed to come in and out because they have previous backgrounds and they figured out a way to get around it. But I think that we do need a little more direction in that, and that's what I'd work towards.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Now we'll jump back over.
For a second.
Sure.
What Kevin just described
Yeah.
is exactly what my bill does that I told you about. It makes people in the school be trained better, and then they could carry if the school board allows it. So I just kind of wanted to clarify. There is
Okay.
one in the works.
All right, very good. Okay. All right, thank you very much.
I just would challenge everyone, don't refer to it as our Second Amendment rights. Our rights do not come from our Constitution. They come from God, and we need to be telling people that this is our right to bear arms, and we assert it, not the other way around.
Yeah. Okay, we are trying to take this in some reasonable order, in some reasonable fashion. So when you've had your speech or your say on whatever happens, we'd appreciate it if you just wait for the next round of questions to begin. And once again, brevity is next to godliness. And, you know, you're up here, it's cross right behind you guys. So, and we all have second hands on our watches, right, guys? Otherwise, we're going to be here until breakfast. There are a lot of issues out there today, and this is a question that I'm going to make up a little bit as I go along myself. A lot of issues out there today that are important for all of us, specifically Common Core. I think everybody has a horse in that race when it comes to education, Common Core. Obamacare, the insurance exchange, high-speed rail. Those are a few of the issues that we face today. Gun control is one. National Defense Authorization Act, what's that all about? The Patriot Act. Specifically, Common Core, Obamacare, insurance exchanges, high-speed rail. Can you tell us, and we'll start with you, Mike, over there, tell us if you had to prioritize those from top to bottom, which would you put on top, and how would you prioritize them, and why did you put them in that order?
Put them all in the bottom.
All in the bottom. They're not important. They're not important? Yes. Oh, okay. In top to bottom, importance. Okay.
Obamacare?
Obamacare, Common Core, insurance exchanges, and high-speed rail.
I guess I'm a little confused. Where you want me to rank them in order?
What you think is the most important issue to be addressed?
I don't think any of them are.
Any of them?
Common Core takes all the local control out of any school board or any school. Obamacare, I don't think I have to talk about that. Is that important? Would that rank in importance?
That's up to you.
Well, I still would say all four of them we need to get rid of. At the same time, maybe not. You can rank them any way you want. Common Core, Obamacare.
Insurance exchanges and high-speed rail.
I guess maybe you could rank high-speed rail as the least favorable to get rid of, but I'd put the other three at the bottom.
Okay, very good. All right, let's move along. Jeff, how would you do that?
I agree. Of the topics presented, the high-speed rail is probably the least important. Common Core is the most important that we must stop, because if we don't, we will not have an American republic the way we understand it in the next generation. I am quite convinced of that. I'm on the school board in Kingston. I've been fighting Common Core all year, and I have been quite upset with the idea that it got pushed upon us without even a roll call vote. That was outrageous. But that is most important, because if we don't, we will have a generation that will not understand the foundations of this country. I would put second most important to stop would be the Obamacare, and I would put the healthcare exchanges right in with that. So.
All right, very good. Thanks, Jeff. And Representative Daley, how about you, sir?
I would have to say, yeah, the exchanges and Obamacare, I think, are the same thing. Common Core, I voted against them all. And again, I would do the same thing. I would put them in the worst stage, and the high-speed rail would probably be at the other end of the list.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right, well, let's go right back to you in the beginning of this one, Representative Daley, if we could. The question is, do you support and are you prepared to defend right to work?
Absolutely, and I prefer to call it freedom to work. I took a stand on freedom. I didn't take a stand on freedom to work until it came to that point when we had to vote. But I had if those of you that are familiar, I did have a forum in Lapeer County. Invited people to come. Unfortunately, the forum was tried to be overtaken. I was a little upset with the situation because I had set up a forum and tried to find the largest place because I knew we'd have a good turnout and a good crowd in Lapeer. So the center building is the largest place that we could have. So I called the manager there, and asked how much it would cost to rent it. And then I contacted the electrical, the Brotherhood, what is it, IBEW, Electrical Brotherhood of United Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, I think. Asked them if they would co-sponsor it. Happened to go to school with a guy named Kevin Schaefer that was involved there. And if he would sponsor it, and he said they would cover half of it. And then I went to the Association of Building Contractors, and they would cover the other half, so we had both sides involved. I had a fellow representative, Mike Shirkey, who was kind of the leader in the right to work cause, come to the event. We got to the event that night, came in and was surprised to see the parking lot full a half an hour before the event. a Democratic tent set up right in front of the front door with "Recall Senator Pavlo" signs on it, and "Representative Daley, don't you enjoy health care benefits through your wife's union job" on there. I went in, and guys standing literally in front of the door with petitions for proposal, was it proposal 2, the Protect Our Jobs proposal. So I immediately walked in and went right to the manager and said, "Who rented this building?" And he said, "Well, you did." And I said, "Well, what's going on in the parking lot?" And his response to me was, "Well, you didn't rent the parking lot." So I said, "So where are the people supposed to go? You've basically got a rally going on in the parking lot, and we're trying to have a serious meeting where we can discuss the pros and cons of this issue." And I hadn't taken a position one way or the other. Well, he said, "Well, there's nothing I can do about it now." And I said, "Well, fine, then I'll be in to talk to your board of directors as we move forward." Well, I walked right into the hall, and he immediately went outside, and he came back, and he said, "Well, it's all done. They've all cleaned out." So I walked back out. Yeah, they took the signs down. The Democratic Party moved out of the booth, and the guys with the petitions moved out, but there was still 100 people standing in the parking lot having a rally out there. So the damage had already been done. So we moved in, and it was a very pretentious meeting. For those of you that were there, you saw it, and we still tried to get both sides of the issue done. And so I was glad that Mike Shirkey came, and I was glad that Kevin Schaefer came. I was glad we had the discussion. But when it came right down to push come to shove that day when we got in there, nobody could prove to me why right to work is wrong for Michigan. My wife's a union member and has been a union member for 18, 19 years. Never once voted to be in that union. And that's what this was all about. It was about a person's right to belong or not belong. I've said since then they've tried to use right to work against me in agricultural bills when it came to a piece of legislation for the potato industry, where what agriculture does for ourselves is we have checkoff programs that we as an industry vote for. So if you're a potato grower, you would vote for this, and you would vote of whether to have this checkoff program or not. And so there was a push to stop that because it was a union. They didn't have a right. And every 3 years you have to revote, either 3 or 5, depending on how it's set up, you have to revote. I said, we wouldn't have right to work in this state if the unions would have come to the table and said, we'll vote every 5 years. I believe we wouldn't have right to work today, because there would have been a vote every 5 years, and the people could have decided. If the unions are really doing their job, the people are going to want them. If they need them, they're going to want them, and they're going to vote for them, they're going to push for them. So it wasn't an easy vote. The day that we took the vote, you guys saw it on the news, there wasn't 12,000 people there. Don't believe it, because I know the Tea Party thing that happened, was it 6 years ago? No, 5 years ago right now, on April 15th. I've got pictures out of my office out on the lawn, and at that time they said there was 2,000 people there. Then you jump ahead a couple of years when the school teachers were there protesting, and they said there was 4,000 people, and there was less people there was than the Tea Party was there. It's amazing what the media will do with this. Then we jump ahead to the right to work protest, and the way they got to 12,000, we found out from the state police. The state police was planning for up to 12,000 people, so the media took that and run with it. My colleagues and myself estimated there was maybe 6,000 or 7,000 people there, similar, maybe a little more than was there for the Tea Party group. But it was a very radical group. I never thought that I would ever have to walk in protected by police. Thank God for arms that day, because we literally had guys with Uzis standing in the hallways of the Capitol building protecting our building and protecting us. So the day, I'm just going to finish up here real quickly, but the day I took that vote, that morning, actually it was the morning before, and I was walking from the Capitol building into the house, and I had 2 constituents from Lapeer County that had been at the program. They came up to me and they said, Representative Daley, how are you going to vote on right to work? I said, I've made up my mind. I'm going to vote yes, I'm in favor of it. Well, how could you do that? You had a town hall in Lapeer and everybody was against it. And I looked at him, I said, so you think I could set up a town hall and have the right people there to make any decision? If that's the way you want me to make my decisions is based on a town hall, then we can do that for every issue. I said, you tell me one reason why I shouldn't. They said, because of the fact that we have to represent what they call we have to represent them whether they belong to the union or not. We're required to. I said, you get me the documentation to show that, maybe you can make me change my mind. Well, they brought me the same talking points from the union, which is stuff that they've put into their own contracts that say that they have to represent everybody. So that's part of the reason why in right to work, you have to go through a cycle and get rid of that contract before it can take place.
Okay.
Sorry I talked longer.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you very much for your response. Another question from the audience here this evening. The question concerns the Karagandhi pipeline, pumping station, and filtration plant, its effect on the local economy, the environment, and the citizens who live near its location, in their loss of real estate value. Is that a concern to you? Is putting this plant in a rural area a concern to you? And I'm sure you're all familiar with the KWA, Karagandhi Water Authority. We'll go ahead with you first.
Well,
Jeff.
I am well aware that we have a lot of aging infrastructure, especially in our water and our wastewater and municipal systems. One of the things that I'm very concerned about is that we've caused our local units of government to become very dependent upon revenue sharing with the state. And I would advocate for having a system where we, instead of sending the tax dollars to Lansing and hoping that we might get them back in some kind of grant funds for some kind of project, that we keep them local to begin with, and we find ways to do that, so that our local leaders can make long-term plans and know that the money that they're going to have control over their revenue based on their tax millages or their whatever process we want to do. If we want to do something with the sales tax to keep it local, we could do that. But it's very difficult to make long-term plans when the state is involved in the funding. And I think that that's a lot to do with why our infrastructure is aging, and I think that that would be a solution.
Let me ask you a follow-up if I could while you're up there. How do you stand on fluoride in the water?
I don't support fluoride in the water. Now, I think that it is a dangerous chemical, and I think that it does have an effect that we might be very subtle, and we might not notice it, but it's an effect. And it is a neurotoxin. So I would oppose putting fluoride in the water. However, water systems are a municipal issue, and you should be able to deal with that locally and decide that locally.
Okay.
I'm telling you that I feel it's a local issue, and I don't feel it should be the state to intervene. I think that that is something we should be able to get the state out of the way, and we should be able to deal with our neighbors locally.
Can we please leave the questions to the moderator? I'd really appreciate it, or we would really appreciate it. There will be time where you can speak with them one-on-one. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move along. We're going to stay on the KWA if we could, and we'll get out here to Senator Green. Senator Green, the KWA, what's your position on that, and what's happening to the community?
Well, water is important to everybody, and I think it's going to be more important as we go along. Clean water, good water. Unfortunately, we can't get enough water out of the ground, so we're going to have to start sucking it from farther away. Hopefully, they don't start sucking our Great Lakes water to California, but I mean, that's kind of the process that we've had to go through. I'm not sure about I'm going to assume they're condemning some property to put the filtration system on. Is that right? Can somebody answer that for me? It's just been purchased. Okay, so, I know there's some problems going underneath the river, but all the other problems, I guess, no, I can't say that I really am up to speed on that.
All right. Are you also opposed to, or are you okay with fluoride in the water?
No, I don't like fluoride in
No,
water.
no fluoride in your water. Okay. Representative Daly, can we get you up there, please?
Sure, and I can address the Karagandhi water system, and it's kind of a two-stage issue. As raw water coming across our county from the Lake Huron, but then the processing plant that's going to be built in Oregon Township that Mark Munson's talking about is being built, and then they're providing the finished product water, the what's the word for it, the filtrated water or whatever, treated water, to the Flint area, and then could be coming back into our county as well, depending on how it goes. We've got to have water. People are going to have water one way or the other. I understand there's some issues out there. The property was purchased legally. I'm a big property rights owner. I am a proponent for the Karagandhi water line because I think the Karagandhi water line is good for agriculture processing across our county and across. We've been held under the thumb of the city of Detroit for too many years up here. They've charged us through the nose for water. It gives our local residents some availability, some options. The city of Lapeer has options, the city of Imlay City has options, the city of North Branch has options. But what it does along the line with that raw water line is it opens up possibilities for ag processing in our thumb. We've got such a huge amount of ag processing in our state that ag products in our state that leave our state to be processed. They should be processed here. It's my understanding that the one ag processing plant we have in the county now in Imlay City, the pickle factory, Pinnacle Foods, actually has to deprocess some of that water, take some of the fluoride and stuff out of it in order to do the job that they need to do. So there's pluses to it. I understand the concerns that the residents have out there. It was done and bought and set up before I realized what was going on out there, Mark. So, thank you. And then the fluoride issue, I don't like fluoride in my water. So.
Okay, nobody likes fluoride, do they? Anybody here like fluoride in their water? Anybody? Nobody. Everybody's against fluoride, right? Good. You may be interested in knowing there were tests and studies done back as far as 1935 by Kettering Institute in Flint that did point out specifically the fluoride and how bad it was for us, and to think that we're drinking it on a daily basis. Good luck getting rid of it. And I understand in the Flint area, by the way, and I don't want to get off topic here if I could, but in the Flint area, if we had enough signatures on a petition, our water commissioner would be able to take the fluoride out of our water. The EPA makes him put it in there, but if we get enough people signatures to say, no, we don't want fluoride, he will not put it in there. So you may be in that same situation out here. You may want to check that out. Let's go to another question here. Senator Green, you ready? You up for it? Here we go. If elected state senator, what would you do specifically to improve jobs and lower the unemployment rate here in Lapeer County?
Well, I do know Lapeer County's had a problem with unemployment for a long time. The state's moving, Lapeer's not, evidently. So specifically, what could I do? You know, in all the other counties that I work with in my district right now, I work really close with the economic development directors. We just got a new plant in Cass City, a new DFA milk plant. One of my district guys, Jim McCloskey, raise your hand, Jim, used to be an economic development director, and that's why I hired him, because I wanted Jim to work really close with all of my county directors, so they're able to get what they need to get help from the government. But also, I know you have a very good economic development director here, Patty Lucas. I've known her for a long time, and so I can give you all that hyperbole. But what could I specifically say I would do different than what I've been doing up there? I guess I can't tell you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senator. And now, Jeff, let's go to you on this one. What would you do specifically if elected to improve jobs and lower the unemployment rate here in Lapeer County?
Well, I think that one of the things we really need to have a conversation about is how can we get some raw materials, lower cost, to bring back manufacturing jobs. We've lost so many. And one answer to that, and it seems to be taking a lot of discussion in some of the other states like Kentucky and whatnot, is legalizing industrial hemp farming. We have a great agricultural bed here. There is no reason why we can't be using that as a product to make all sorts of composite materials. We don't need to be importing all of this plastic stuff from China. We can be making it right here. We can be selling it right here. We also could use it for fuel. We could cut down on our fuel costs quite a bit by using hemp. It's more efficient than the corn ethanol. I think also we need to lighten up on regulations on small businesses, especially small startup businesses. And I've heard from a number of constituents about concerns about licensing for, you have to get all kinds of licenses for the simplest of occupations that I think that we don't do in a lot of states, and I think that we could lighten up on that a lot.
Okay, thank you very much for your response, Jeffrey. And now, Representative Daley, you're up.
Well, I would like to continue what we've been doing, and I think we've made an awful lot of improvements already, because government doesn't create jobs. We create an environment for jobs. And I think we've done that. We've shown that in the last 4 years. It's just a matter of getting it rolling. The Carignan water system we're talking about, that's one of the steps in getting processing. Ag processing are the jobs of the future in this area, in the thumb. We grow the most soybeans of any place in the state. There's only one processing plant in the state of Michigan for soybeans, and that's in Zeeland on the other side of the state. We're a perfect location for that. We worked Just recently, we were working very hard to try to get Michigan Milk. Actually, the plant that Senator Green's talking about 7 years ago, I was disgusted when I heard this, had a possibility of coming to Imlay City. Believe it or not, that very same plant got passed up in Imlay City and ended up in Cass City. If they can build it in Cass City, we could have built it here. But there was another dairy plant that's been in the works. We've been working with I brought all of the governments in Lapeer County together. We sat down with Patricia Lucas in Lapeer, and we put together a plan, and we put an application in to bring that, try to get Michigan milk producers to come and look at Lapeer County. We've got the I-69 corridor, runs all the way through to Canada, all the way across. We're on that corridor. That's great for the whole district, all the way up into the thumb, down to the I-69 corridor. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Representative, stand by. I'll give you the first shot at this one. What bills have you sponsored that have been signed into law showing your effectiveness as a legislator for not only your district, but all of the state of Michigan?
My very first law that was passed was the MEAP law, actually Michigan Agriculture and Environmental Assurance Program. It was actually the first piece of legislation signed by our new governor. It was Public Act 1 and Public Act 2. Very proud of that piece of legislation. I'm trying to think, and I didn't bring a list in of legislation that I passed. In the House of Representatives, we obviously, you'll never see a list like Senator Green's got, because we've got 110 legislators there. We work together. We work to get things done. Another bill that I'm very proud of, actually, if you would have asked me, my two proudest moments would have been the piece of legislation that deals with gift of life. We did a gift of life organ donation. If you're familiar with organ donation, we worked to get a license plate set up and a fundraising to promote that organ donation. We've been very successful by passing that legislation to go have a 30% increase in people signing up for organ donation. I've worked on a piece of legislation that dealt with tax improprieties for agriculture, certain machines, certain equipment for ag tiling machines. It really irritates me that that laws will be put in place that aren't uniform across the table. So, you know, there is an exemption from personal property tax for agriculture across our state, and tiling machines, the machines they use to put tile down for farm for production agriculture, some were being taxed, some were not being taxed. So we changed that, put that into law, that it was taxed. I've worked on a lot of other legislation, and I'm supposing that when you stand up, that means my time is up. But
that's about it. Okay. Thank you, Representative Daly. Thank you very much for your response. Senator Mike Green, you're up, sir. Same question to you.
Well, I did go through a number of the legislation that I did pass. Specifically, I will talk a little bit about Kevin's, because the first bill that I passed in 2011 was to allow, which has never been able to, if the MEDC is going to give money to businesses to help start up. I know a lot of you folks disagree with the MEDC, but if they're going to, they have to at least be able to use it for agriculture startups. And they had never been able to do that before. It was against the law for them to use it in ag. Since then, we've helped start ag processing all around the state, and it was also beneficial for the DFA plant up there. And so that probably was one of the bills that helped a lot across the state. Did you want some more bills, or was one enough?
One will do, thank you. You probably have a list of 20 or 30, and we are running a little bit short here. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Jeffrey, we haven't heard from you in a while. Let's take this one, okay? Does the thought of a part-time legislator give you pause in your decision to run for this position?
No, not at all. I would have ran even if it had passed. That would not have changed my decision to run. The part-time legislature initiative is something that I think that it's kind of the devil in the details. That particular proposal, I like the idea of a part-time legislature. I actually had a chance to go out to New Hampshire during the presidential primary, and they have a part-time legislature that works very local, very fluid. You only have 3,600 constituents in your district, so you literally can get to know them. We don't have multiple counties. We just had a couple of towns. I love that approach. It's just a nights and weekends kind of thing. This proposal that's going around with the petition that's currently being pushed, it calls not for a part-time legislature, but for a full-time seasonal legislature. You would be full-time in Lansing from the middle of January until the middle of March. Now, I don't know of very many jobs that you can get that just let you take 2 months off every year, just because. Except for if you're a lobbyist, they'll surely run for office. And probably a few retired people or attorneys or people who run their own business. But I think you're limiting the sector of society that could potentially be among your candidates. I'm also very concerned about the proposals repealing of Section 37 and reenacting it under Section 13D, which creates a joint committee of the House and the Senate to be allowed that if any executive branch agency were to come up with a new regulation, we currently have this in our Constitution, that after the legislature adjourns and goes home, this special super committee or joint committee would be able to suspend that until the next session. The problem with the new proposal is it also allows them to go back in time to prior to the previous years and overturn those, even though the legislature has met and has had time to look at it. So my concern is that you'd end up with the lobbyists writing these really inflated bills, the executive branch writing regulations to interpret them, and then the inner circle of the establishment picking and calling the shots. So I don't like that particular proposal, but if there was a better proposal, I would support it.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeff. And moving along, we have another question here from the audience, and we'll probably start with you, Representative Daley. What are your beliefs regarding fracking as it relates to the environment, and do you believe fracking is right for Lapeer County?
Fracking, yeah, pretty hot issue in Lapeer County at this point in time. I've attended a couple of the meetings that have been held. I haven't actually made a full decision yet whether I am supported or I don't support it. I do think it's important that we get gas and oil, gas particular, with fracking. I believe that unfortunately some of the meetings, in fact the one that I attended was more one-sided. It was only in the opposition side. I've been working recently, I just found out in the last couple of days as a matter of fact, and looking at this issue, that there are actually 3 wells being fracked in Sanilac County. Been trying to get a chance to get a group of legislators and go up there, and maybe even a few local people as well, to actually see a facility. One of the meetings I was at, I heard a guy get up and say that we need clean water. We don't need oil and gas. And I thought, well, what's he going to say next winter when his water is frozen on his table because he can't heat his house? We do need oil and gas. We do need oil and gas, and I'm a firm believer in property rights and people's rights to do those things. What some of the things that I see that are untruths are the water coming out of the fountain being lit. Well, that's been happening in areas with wells long. It has nothing to do with fracking. That gas is coming out of gas pockets that are at much lower levels than where we're going down for our water, 130, 40 feet. They're hitting that gas pocket, not down 1.5 miles. So to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't made a total decision. I'm still looking and investigating, trying to determine, but I do think it's important. We've had absolutely no issues in the state of Michigan concerning contamination from fracking. DEQ, this is what I've been told. DEQ, we are one of the strongest, the most restrictive states in the union. So that's why I haven't made an actual decision yet. I'm still investigating.
Thank you very much, Representative Daley. And the next question, let's see, who are we going to go to here? Jeff, I haven't heard from you in a while. I'm not picking on you or anything, Jeff, don't get me wrong. What can be done to return wealth to the people? Not only are we 17.5 trillion in debt, poorer people are getting further behind. And middle-class people who saved money in local banks no longer get interest on their money. Who is benefiting from all of this windfall money?
Well, the bankers are benefiting. That seems pretty obvious. Look at what's going on. We bailed out the banks. We have the Federal Reserve printing money like no tomorrow, or doing quantitative easing. That's why your interest rates are so low. But you know what? I think the senator from Massachusetts, the Democrat, that made a really good point in regards to interest rates. Why is it that we are charging our college students on federal loans such a high student loan rate for our interest when we're letting the banks have almost nothing? They're borrowing at almost nothing. So we probably could really have a discussion about that.
What specifically can we do to return wealth to the people now? What specifically can we do to get more money in the pockets of the average individual?
Well, one of the things that we need to do, and I don't, this is going to be a very difficult challenge, but we need to have a labor market where people are able to say no. Right now, almost everyone I know is in a position where they can't just walk away from their job. There's no way they could. So as long as they can't, they're so dependent that we need a situation where we have an opportunity to say, well, if you want to get the work done, it's going to have to be a higher wage. Well, how can you do that when we're sending all the jobs overseas? We need to get manufacturing coming back here. We need to really ask ourselves, why is it that if we had a minimum wage in the 60s, that if it were in today's dollars would be over $21 an hour? I don't support the idea of a minimum wage, but I have to ask the question, where did the money go? And I'll tell you where it went. It went away because we ruined our business sector. We ruined it with policy.
All right. Thank you very much for your response. We all, I think, will pretty much agree on getting jobs back, and manufacturing jobs would be certainly very good jobs to get back because most of them are pretty good paying jobs. Let's go under the assumption now that manufacturing jobs are, let's take it off the table for a moment, and let's just say they're lost almost forever for virtue of the discussion here this evening at the forum. Where would you go? And we'll go to Representative Daly second. If you did not have manufacturing jobs to fall back on, where would you go next? Yes, sir.
No, I've as I mentioned before, agriculture. Agriculture processing is the second largest industry in our state. It's pretty simple. Agricultural processing are good jobs, good availability, and that's what we need to stress in our state.
Agriculture. Okay. I would see where that would play out well in Lapeer. I don't know how that would play in Detroit, but we could tell the people down there. Let's move. Mike, do you have any input on that?
Like Kevin said, it's tough for government to create jobs, and we can't. But it takes entrepreneurism to create them, and we've stifled the entrepreneurs in our country. We just don't let them do what they used to do. We don't give them the ability to get out there and borrow money, because they need money once they develop their product. They need money to produce it. They need help in selling it. They need IT structure to sell it. My son in Mayville sells most all of his log equipment, or all of his log siding and rails and everything on the internet. And so, and there's areas in our rural country where there's no internet. And even in the thumb, there's spots where there's no internet. But I really believe that if we don't start working with our entrepreneurs, and Governor Snyder is. Governor Snyder has worked really well trying to get entrepreneurs opportunities, and I think that's where our jobs are going to have to come from.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. There is an issue on the table today that we have signed on to here in the state of Michigan. That's Medicaid extensions. Let's go to Representative Daly. Can you address Medicare or Medicaid expansion? What you think about that?
Well, they go first on all of them, eh?
Yeah.
Medicaid extension. So you're talking about the Medicaid expansion, I'm assuming, and now the issues that we've got. The issues we've got with Medicaid expansion in the state right now, we've got, I'm getting calls and getting letters from our local community mental health that what we've done is we've expanded Medicaid, and so now we've just created a new line. No matter when you create government programs, you're always creating a place where there's always going to be there's always a line where somebody gets left out. All we've done is taken the level of people that we're getting it from here, and we've moved it up the ladder a little higher. And so we've got those people, and now those people are screaming and hollering because they don't get coverage. They want more money. We've created a real problem, and it was an issue today. I working on our budgets that we were working on today. There was a group of us that did not want to vote on this budget because of the fact that we're still putting more money into Medicaid in our state. And we don't like that. We voted against the Medicaid expansion. We don't like putting more money into it. We ended up passing it out of the House today. It's going to go over, and it's going to go into conference committee with the Senate. But the issue of just continuing to put more and more money into the problem doesn't fix the problem. I'm not sure if that answers the question or not. But,
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it's a response. We appreciate that. For sure. Thank you, Representative Daley. Let's move along here a little bit this morning. And I had to pause for a moment, if I could, and do a little editorial comment here, just to kind of break up the, what we're doing here for a minute or two. It's not going to take long at all. It's not going to take long, I promise at all. But I have to say this while I'm available and while you're available here. I think you in this room are the ones that can really make a difference to what happens in this country today. I can tell by the questions you're asking, what you're concerned about, and you're here today taking time out of your schedule to listen to these gentlemen, what they think about these issues, what they plan on doing about these issues, and what kind of a legislator would they make for us here in the state of Michigan. This is a very difficult time in this country. I think it's, quite frankly, this is my personal opinion, I have to say this is a real turning point for the United States of America. If people don't begin waking up, you'll see us with a dumbed-down population. We'll see with kids graduating don't know how to add, subtract, or even have cursive writing. All right? You'll see Common Core just being thrown out the window. I've talked to a lot of educators in the last couple of weeks. Every one of them, you mentioned Common Core, they say, no way, it's the worst thing that could ever come down the pike. Obamacare, I don't think anybody in the world is really happy with Obamacare. Anybody really happy with Obamacare in here? Okay. I saw them, they just slipped out the back door right there. One guy in here. But with all of these issues on the table, I think what you're doing here tonight, Terry, is extremely important, that we get together and we talk about these things, because that's the best way to make things happen. And I know everyone in this room has an opinion on something. Let's say, for instance, as an example, Common Core. And if you're against the Common Core program, which a lot of people are already, you go to a friend of yours and don't hammer him on the head and tell him, we got to get rid of it. It's the worst thing to come down. We got to get rid of it. You're forcing that guy to change his mental set. What I suggest you do is just throw a little caveat out there. Just say, oh, by the way, have you heard of this? And if they say, yeah, that's great, it's wonderful, I haven't been out of school. Oh, you really think it's wonderful? Do you know kids in the mathematics today, there are kids who can't do it, and because they can't do it, they begin to think less of themselves, and their esteem begins to go down. I think this is Common Core is designed to frustrate children and make them very anxious, and therefore that's all I got to say. Excuse me, I could go on for 3 hours, but I do that every day. We have another question coming up right now.
Yeah, Lou, I think what we're going to do is probably maybe ask one more question of each candidate, please, so that we can get it wrapped up. Everybody can get home on time. But if you could pick 3 really great questions, hopefully these candidates will hang out a little while after our forum and speak with all of you one-on-one. Please be respectful of each other and make sure everybody gets a chance to talk to their candidates.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Here we go. One more question, guys. And we'll start over here. We'll start with Representative Daley. Haven't started with you in a long time, have we? Here we go. Do you support and are you prepared to defend right to work?
Absolutely. I think I already.
Oh, did you already answer that
question? Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, let's see here. We'll go through this here. This person has a 1972 Camaro for sale now.
Yeah, I'd like the 1973 Camaro. Sure.
Would you like the Camaro?
Yeah. I'd rather have a Mustang.
Then answer the question again a second time, just like you did the first time. Well, I just expressed my opinions on Common Core, but it is very important. Our children need to be educated. What do you think about Common Core? What's your position on that? Oh, sure, go ahead.
Lou, I might override you here.
All right.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. I think we'd all like to ask each candidate individually, why are you running for this office? Does that sound like an appropriate question?
Very good.
Okay, let's ask each candidate. Senator Green, we're going to start with you. You haven't been first in a while.
I'm running for this office because of my 5 kids and my 20 grandkids. I'm afraid for them. I tell my kids not every day, often, that you're living in an entirely different world than I was ever raised in. And you have to prepare yourself for it. Now, my oldest son's a survivalist, and I'm not quite like him, but he believes that someday he's going to need to be in a position to have to survive. But we, as legislators, have to embark on giving our kids an opportunity to have the same types of freedoms that we had, have the same types of love for our country that we had. And I don't think that just happens. I I remember back, some of you may remember, those of you with gray hair like mine, the days of Jimmy Carter when we had hyperinflation, 14%, hyper unemployment, hyper everything. And you know what? I never thought we'd ever come out of that. But we did. Guess who we elected? Ronald Reagan. You know what? We need another Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan wasn't Ronald Reagan when we elected him, though, you know what? He turned into something that was a great thing for our country. And he's my hero. But we need another Ronald Reagan. If we get one next term, and I hope it's not a Hillary, but you know what? It doesn't come easy either. The only place I seen Ronald Reagan come from was from God, because he really did make a change in this country that really affected me and my kids. So we need another one. How are we going to get them? Well, folks, we need revival. And we need to change this country from within and not from without. So that's why I'm running. That's why I'm working in the Senate. That's why I'm doing everything I think is right. Trust me, I've not done everything right since I've been there. None of us, well, he hasn't yet, but Kevin, neither one of us have done our perfect legislators. But we try to do what's best for our country. And that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
You know, never in my life would I have thought I would have been doing this a couple years ago. I talked to a friend of mine, Ron, who is a retired farmer, and he was telling me that the old one-room schoolhouses back in the day used to actually teach the Robert's Rules of Order and the parliamentary procedure. And we graduated kids being ready to lead and self-govern. My generation didn't get that. We learned it from political campaigns. We had a very inspiring candidate a couple of years ago that brought a lot of new faces in the door, and it inspired me because I was able to finally see a problem firsthand and stand in the same room as that problem and realize I can fix that. That's not a big deal. I might not be able to fix everything, but I can fix that. And so because of that, I got inspired to run for office, and I ran for the Kingston School Board, and I got on that board, and I realized there's a lot of things I can do. And I've been looking at our country today, and I look at where we're going with Obamacare, and I look where we're going with losing our rights. Our right to a trial by jury is no longer guaranteed. Our right to, all of our rights are being under attack. And I thought we need to do what we can do. And so I decided that I wanted to run for a state-level office at least so that I could promote ideas that are of state or national importance. And frankly, simply because of where I live, we already had 7 candidates in the state house race. One of them is a good friend of mine, Tom Wassa. He's a great statesman. Now, I'm in Tuscola County, so that's a different state house district than this. But I just didn't have it in my heart to run against a good statesman who I knew would be somebody who would solve problems. And so my only other choice was to either run for state senate or another office such as State Board of Education or against Candace Miller for Congress. And I actually did try to do that. I came up 50 signatures short. But I did try. And so let it not be said that I did nothing. Thank you.
So why am I going to run for the state senate? You know, the best part of this job for me is working with you folks out there, the people in the communities across the thumb. We've got a wonderful community in Lapeer County, and I'm finding out that Tuscola County is just as wonderful in Lapeer. Bay County is just as wonderful as Lapeer County. Bay County, unfortunately, is a little more Democrat than the rest of us are. But you know what? Once we're elected, I think it's really important. I mean, you will see me. If the MEA wants me to come, I've gone to every forum the MEA has asked me to come to. I represent both sides. Once we're elected, I think people forget that sometimes. I don't distinguish between a Republican or a Democrat or a conservative or a liberal. We may not agree, but you will always get a straight, consistent answer from me. When a bill comes up, and for instance, when it comes to fracking, I'm not going to make a decision on fracking until I've done all my homework. Thank God nobody's came and asked me about leasing our farm yet, because I'm not sure what I would do today. if they came, because I've got some concerns, but I also want to be realistic about it as well. So I want to represent the people. I think that's important. I think it's important. I love our system when it's done properly. I am really irritated with the fact that incumbents are automatically passed the job just because they're an incumbent, and I think that's wrong. I think competition is good. I think it's good for us to get out there, do these type of events, get to know each other, and work hard, and then hopefully the people vote once but vote daily. Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank a few people. First of all, let's say thank you to Lou Lobsinger from 1570 AM Super Talk for moderating this event. Thank you once again, Jake Slyman, for an amazing essay that you wrote. We really appreciate your hard work. Thank you, Senator Green. Appreciate it very much. Thank you, Kevin Daly, Representative Daly. Thank you, Jeff Phillips. Thank you all for coming. We would like to end the evening in prayer, because we know our country has so many problems, our state has problems, but we still have an awful lot to be thankful for. So if you wouldn't mind standing with me this evening in prayer, and I'd appreciate it very much. Father, we thank you so much for this important event this evening. We thank you for watching over us and shining your light upon us to further our education and protect our liberties. Our prayer is that you watch over us on our travels home, and that you watch over these brave candidates who have come to meet with us tonight. May their campaigns be blessed and positive. Keep them safe as they further their missions to lead our communities. Thank you, Father, for loving us and protecting us. In the name of Jesus, amen. Thank you. We'll see you all next month. First Tuesday evening of June will be our representative forum, so don't miss that either. Thank you.